Good. Okay. So let's say we'll ask a question. What is this whole business of Judaism all about? Let's say we try to distill it to get to its core. What are we trying to accomplish, this whole project? So it would be reasonable to look at Hashem's introduction when he introduced himself to us. Meaning, let's say we would ask, what was the relationship of Avram, the Avis, Avram to Hashem? What were they trying to do with their Avodas Hashem? So we would look to the places where Hashem met them and spoke to them, which happens by Avram and Yaakov. Hashem spoke to Avram and said, Ani Hashem, Asher Tzizichem or Kazman. He said to Yaakov, Ani Hashem, Elokei Avram Avicha, Elokei Yitzchak. So there was a meeting, an introduction, Ani Hashem, a point where there's a relationship being established, and that might be a place to start. If we ask, okay, what was Hashem for the office? What they want with him? That would be a place to look. What was Hashem for Avram? Let's see. Hashem said, Ani Hashem. So now he has Hashem.
You mean like
Oh, so can we get the mute then? So yeah. So Ani Hashem comes first, both by Avram and Yaakov. And Ani Hashem would be more significant because it's Ani Hashem. Yeah.
It's a chaining.
Yeah.
It seems that the hiskalus of Kelshaka was a bigger hiskalus because it was a hiskalus of Ba'ira.
Right. Okay. So the truth is like this. So Lemaisa, both to Avram and to Yaakov, Hashem said Ani Hashem, which is Stira Galuya to what it says in the beginning of last week's parasha. Ba'ira Avram Baditzak Yaakov the Shakai. Shmi Hashem lo nedati lahem. So it says in the beginning of Eira that Hashem appeared to Avram and to Yaakov to kill Shakai, not B'Shmi Hashem. He said, "Ani kill Shakai" to Avram and to Yaakov, but he also said, "Ani Hashem" to Avram and to Yaakov. Why Yitzchak is different in this regard? It's not. It's important. We're not going to discuss that now. Parenthetically, I think that's a Rashi. The Eira Rashi says El Ha'avis. What's Rashi saying? Pasuk says Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, but the truth is that Avram and Yaakov had the Ani Kel Shakai and also Ani Hashem, which is a steer to this pasuk. But we'll see that pasuk is addressing it. Yitzchak not. So why does the pasuk say Avram Yitzchak Yaakov? Because it's treating them as a unit. And the unit of the others had Ani Kel Shakai Shmei Hashem Lo Nedati. So this is a point. Note that there's this very important stira, and that it does say Ani Hashem to Avram, to Yaakov, and unlike in contradiction to what it says in the beginning of Eira. Good. Now, that would be true if you're talking as an individual. Avram and Yaakov, what was their business with Hashem? So we would look at Hashem, introduce himself, and take it from there. Similarly, if you asked what's our business with Hashem, the national business with Hashem, so we also have an Ani Hashem in the beginning of the era as a nation. The message to Bnei Yisrael. L'chein emor lebnei Yisrael Ani Hashem. Tell them Ani Hashem. Okay, so that's where it starts. So if you ask, let's get to the root. What is this business with Hashem? What are we so busy with? We would look at the beginning of Eira, where it says Hashem is introducing himself to us. Take it from there. So what does it say at the beginning of Eira? Here's the first tema. The beginning of our relationship with Hashem seems to be twofold, and the two things don't obviously connect. One thing is there's a message to Bnei Yisrael Ani Hashem. The message Ani Hashem is Hashem is introducing himself. There's something, whatever you call it, to relate to have a connection to with. And it's time for them to know me. Yadu ki Ani Hashem. It's time for them to be familiar with Hashem. Yidatem ki Ani Hashem lekeichem. And another thing that's happening is freedom. It's cheres from Mitzrayim. To really get to this point without the whole Akdama, a very simple question. What is going on in the fact that our relationship with Hashem starts with freedom from physical bondage? How do those two things go together? But Hashem freed us from time. Very nice, thank you very much. He did something very important. Okay, great. But why is it that the Ani Hashem, which is the relationship, the spiritual relationship we can call it, or the Das relationship, there's something to know, something to connect to, why does that correspond to a deliverance from Shibud? And again, if you take this moment, which as it is, as being the moment in the beginning of an era, as the defining moment of what this whole project is all about, there seems to be two different things. On the one hand, the project is to be free. To be free, you can be free. And on the other hand, and that doesn't require any Hashem, you can be free. Free from Shibud Mitzvah. And then there's this also Ani Hashem happening. And B'Yadatam Ki Ani Hashem. So which one is it? And then we have a third thing to add to this whole discussion, and that's the Torah. Doesn't say anything in the era about the Torah. If you ask most people, if you have to say what is the whole project about? Torah mitzvahs. And there's no mention of that in the beginning of the era. If I'm going to insist, and I am insisting, that this is where the essence, the core of the project is here in the beginning of the era, so there's freedom, and Vidatim Ki Ani Hashem, nothing about the Torah. Nothing about, and I'll tell you, Chukim u'Mishpatim. Just Das Hashem, familiar with Hashem, and freedom. So what is the Torah? And then
mitzvahs were given, and there were mitzvahs before already. There were mitzvahs given by people.
But it doesn't say anything about it. No, but it doesn't say anything about it. It says unless you say Kim, it's to give you mitzvahs. Okay, you have to look. Maybe the Mechilta. You have to look.
Is there also
Rashi says, I don't think so. No.
Is there also Eretz Yisrael?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a hemshich of freedom.
What's
It's right. So that's I was wondering if anyone reads into that and Kim to give you mitzvahs. Oh, says the Ibn Ezra okay. So that's a makam we have to look into. And the Ramban says it as well, echoing the Ibn Ezra.
He's not saying
echoing
that's what the Torah is.
And he says, one second, he says, the Ramban's Maisiv, the Li, because there it says, V'yisam Li Segul. What do you say there, what?
The word is not the Torah. He's saying
what is Li La'am?
When they did the Torah, then it was Li La'am.
Right.
The word is Li La'am.
Okay.
It could be that there's also the Torah, but
yeah.
Being the Am, not keeping the Torah.
I hear. Right. Okay. Fine. So maybe the Torah is a timtza for Li La'am. Following the laws of God. Be the Am of Hashem. Following His laws. And that's that. So maybe it is here. Okay, so let's put it again.
There is instruction.
Yeah, I understand. But it's there. Right.
Whenever you say being the Am, it comes together with the Torah, but you don't talk about the Torah. The word is being.
Yeah, Lila Am, be the Am of Hashem is that He makes the laws. He makes the laws. To be the Am of someone, usually you're the Am of a Melech, it means the Melech makes the laws. If you're the Am of Li, Hashem makes the laws. That might be true. Okay.
He makes the laws, but the laws is just to keep things in place. The Tachlis is not the laws. The Tachlis is the Am.
That could be right. Fine, that's okay. That might be. But let's see how these three things now we have. Even if it is in the beginning of Eira, we have three things. We have Yedatim Ki Ani Hashem, or Ani Hashem, even taken as base. Ani Hashem, introduction. Ani Hashem, something to know. There's freedom, and then there's Torah, whether it's there in the Eira or not. And we should mention Ein Lecha Ben Chayron Elam Yishal Isik B'Torah. So apparently, Chazal connecting freedom and Torah. Although this seems to be the opposite of the Metzias. How does Torah make you free? If Torah makes shibudim, chiyuvim, how does Torah make you free? Okay. So I want to start this from another place here with the Gemara Chagiga. The Mishnah says that Chagiga is the mitzvah of Chagiga, the mitzvah to bring a carbon Chagiga in the Shalosh Regalim is one of the portions of the Torah that are harorim, kaharorim hatluyim b'sayra, like mountains that are hanging on a hair, because it's mikra mu'at. So the Gemara says, why is Chagigis Mikamut? Michtav Ksivim, it's a pasuk. Chagaisa Moisei, Chag Hashem. Says the Gemara like this, because the Papa asked the Kash Tabai. Mai de Hai v'Chagaisa Moisei Chag Hashem Zvicha. Dilmo Chagu Chagal Kamrachma. The reason why Chagaisa Moisei Chag Hashem L'Shon Shugalim is not considered Mefurish, you have to bring a korban, because Chagaisim could mean to make a party. L'Harba Simcha. Says the Gemara, Elameato d'chsivi yochaygu li ma'midbar, hachanami d'chaygu chagahom. It says yochaygu li ma'midbar. Moshe told Paro, yochaygu li ma'midbar. That doesn't mean to go make a holiday. It means to be karbonis. Says the Gemara, no, maybe that also means chaygu chag. Chidei ma'achanami v'chsiva yom Moshe gam atadik timbidim zvach va'elis. Yeah, and the Zvachim is to eat, Rashi explains. Fine. The Gemara goes hold. Then the Gemara says like this. Ultimately, the Gemara goes back and says, here's how we know that Yechoyguli Bamidbar, that Moshe said to Pare, means to bring a carbon. And once we know the Yechoyguli Bamidbar means to bring a carbon, we'll soon say how the Gemara is. Once we establish Yechoyguli Bamidbar means to bring a carbon, then we know the Chagaisim Moisei Chag Hashem also means a carbon. And how do we know the Yechoyguli Bamidbar means to bring a carbon? Ksiv Hachav Yechoyguli Bamidbar. Ksiv Hasam Hazvachim Umincha Higashim Bamidbar. Pasuk in Amos. Did you bring karbonis in the midbar for 40 years? Hashem doesn't want you karbonis. So there it says Bamidbar, here it says Bamidbar. Ma'alahan on Zvachim Afkan Zvachim. Here it says Yechoyguli Bamidbar. And let's say for Amos it says Hazvachim Umincha Higashim Bamidbar Bam Shod Beis Yisrael. So just like over there it means karbonis. So over here in Shmois it means karbonis. So good, nice Gzeir Shavu. Mike Haror Matuim B'Sayra says Gemara. So why is it hanging by hair? It's Gzeir Shavu.
We have to gilu that every chag is the problem.
Gilu the Chagaisim Moisei. V'Yechoyguli, and therefore the Chagaisim Moisei. Okay, every chag. So Gemara says, why is it Haror Matuim B'Sayra? Divitam Divikabal Le'afina. Can't learn out Divitam Divikabal. Usually, when we say Divitam Divikabal Le'afina, it's the end of the conversation, end of story. Here, it remains a Saira, it remains the Smach. In other words, there is no, this is ultimately the source. It's not a Smach. Smach is something else. Sometimes the Gemara says, it's like a Gemara Smach. Or whatever. We know that it's not Smach. Here, it is the source, but it's not including the Saira. And the question is, if Divitam Divikabal Le'afina, how is it the source? Either it's Gzeir Shav, and then it's a proper Gzeir Shav. If not, why is it anything? Why does it serve as any source? So the Maisa does like this pasuk in Amos, where the Navi says, "Azvachim umincha igashli b'midbar b'amsonah Beis Yisrael," is one of the many psukim in the Nevi'im that, where the Nevi'im are opposed to Karbanos. Maybe a share. So there are many psukim in the Nevi'im where they're misnagit to karbonis. For example, Lama li rov zivchechem, it says in Yeshaya. In Micha it says, Higel echad matei Hashem doish mefakiim. So it's mishpat avas chesed ne'elech zelekecha, not karbonis. Achayfetz Hashem ba'oiles. Hashem doesn't need your karbonis. And then this pasuk in Amos, Hazvachim u'mincha igashlim b'num Shem Beis Yisrael. Did he bring karbonis for 40 years in the desert? That's not what Hashem wants. That's not what Hashem wants. What does Hashem want? Say the Nevi'im consistently. Hashem wants chesed mishpat tzlakim. That's what the Nevi'im say all the time. And this is obviously Stira Geluya to the Torah. She insists that Hashem does want karbanos. Stira Geluya, you have to take the Nevi'im, take the words as they say them. Micha says, what does Hashem want from you? Hashem doyashim ki im asayis mishpat al chesed. It's Kiyim, nothing but that. And in the context, say for Micha, in the context, it says not Karbonis, because Hashem wants nothing but for that. This problem, the Rambam says in the Murder Ruchim, thank you, was dealt with everyone that preceded me. What's that? Everyone that I saw and heard. What? Yeah, there continues. Everyone stops with Kim Lear, then it continues to do all the mitzvahs, to do all the mitzvahs. What? Yeah, but it continues, and it says to do the mitzvahs. Okay, so what? But it says Kabbalah.
I'm agreeing.
Yeah, but it says a Kabbalah. No, but I mean the fact that it says Kiyim. What? Because it continues. Yeah, exactly. Right. So here in Micha it says, "Bama kadem Hashem ikav lo dekemara." Kemen ba'olis, should I give Hashem oilis? Hagolim b'nei shana. Hayirtza Hashem ba'alfei elim. No. Higel adam atayv Hashem doish mimcha. The answer is no. Ki im asayis mishpat. He doesn't want karbonis. He wants mishpat chesed tzneilachs. The Torah says Hashem does want karbonis.
And then you have to compare that before saying Hashem wants karbonis.
Yeah, the Ratzon. Yeah, Ratzon. Yeah, two us. What?
The Ratzon to misbarish isn't for us to be misrasted with Name of Hashem. For us to find favor on Hashem's lives.
Well, he commanded the mitzvah.
I understand. I want to
Yeah. After Shlomo Melech, El Kabbalah,
Hashem doesn't want it.
Yeah.
Hashem wants it.
Very effective. What?
I want to have a plus as direct as
Yeah, that's the Ratzon.
the Kabbalah wasn't there over there. First was the Tefillah.
Seeing the Ratzon Yelachem doesn't mean Hashem wants it.
Yeah.
I think there's two ways to say it.
That's why I agree. That's why
That we are misratzed.
I hear what you're saying. It sounds like it was
The Ratzon is the
the Shlomo was the Tefillah, then he brought the Karbanas, and then everything was
That's what Hashem.
Yeah, it's Hashem.
Yeah, that's what
Hashem
Hashem says that he wants it.
That's I know. The cup. But I'm saying. Where's the Kilol Ratzon Yelachem? Right. Like lo yiratzeh. Lo yiratzeh. It is all places. Right, lo yiratzeh. Yeah, but also the Ma'aseh Micha says doirish. Hashem doesn't seek anything. I mean, Yeshaya says, "Lama li roiv zifrechem." Mi bikesh leis mi yetchem. It's your shtick Torah. It's your shtick Torah.
Because they were being mean to
I want to ask. The pasuk says in Micha, I have a stira. The pasuk says in Micha, Moshe Doshim for Kiyim. And the stira to Sefer Vayikra says that.
Maybe Kiyim is it mamish.
No, that's it's a stira.
Why is
Maybe
it
it's
only
part
the
that he's
Karbanis?
trying to say. He's
Yeah, it's stira there.
trying to make a
Stira. Micha
point.
makes it specific the context of Kabbalah.
He's trying to make a point that if you do carbonis without this, it's not a problem. So it's
Maybe
just the
not
way it's saying, but
proud.
of course Hashem wants that
Yeah.
also.
So the Ma'aseh like this. I mean, the Ma'aseh it's like Mashiach will come into yeshiva and give a shmul. He's saying, I don't want you to tefillin. You're saying Lashon Hara, and you think Hashem wants you to tefillin. So that's all very nice. But first of all, if the Mashgiach would say all Hashem wants is that you should be nice to your friends, I would get it up for Ma'aseh. But also the Ma'aseh Chazal and the Chazal, we have to learn the way Chazal learned. Chazal learned to the Nevi'im. This is what Midrash is, to take the pasuk literally. People think Midrash is the opposite. No, Midrash is what the pasuk says. It means exactly what it says. Now let's figure out where that takes us. And don't make it fit to what you think you know. You have to read the pasuk and say, "Kosav echadayim kiyim, the kosav echadayim hayev darash Moshe, hikar Moshe." That's a steer. That's a drasha. Being a drasha.
Hang on, the Psukim in the Torah do not say that Hashem is interested in Karbanas.
Okay, you wrote it.
He wants it. Because he needs it.
No.
I don't mean if I.
Wait, but it's a mitzvah. I
somebody-
don't understand. It's a mitzvah.
Right? I mean, mitzvah, I understand that means that if somebody wants a certain thing, he has a certain goal,
Right.
and then there's something which is going to take would take him away from his goal, and therefore he needs to do something to reach the goal.
Right.
So is that what he wants? No, what he wants is his goal.
Right.
That's just a way to get to the goal.
Right.
So just because the Torah says Karbanas doesn't mean that Hashem wants it, Could be Hashem.
It says
needs
l'rotzen. It
Kabbalah.
says rotzen the rechnichech. It means there's no greater excitement, no greater expressions of rotzen than Kabbalah. Hayirtze Hashem. No, Hayirtze Hashem ba'alfei Edom. Yeah, the pasuk says Hayirtze. The pasuk says. The pasuk says. Right? When you're rotzen, saying it. Right? Again, I would ask this also. Mi bikesh leis miyetchem v'leis chatzerei. Mi bikesh. What do you mean mi bikesh? Hashem told me to do it. Get off my life. It's a mitzvah.
Where's the first place this do you have?
Hosea. Hosea says what?
The first Navi.
Hosea, well, maybe even Shmuel. But Etzem is machlekes Shmuel and Shol.
Right, that's
Shmuel and Shol. Everyone likes quoting Shmuel. Mishmai mizevach toiv. Shmaya mizevach toiv lahakshir mechil levelim. But Shol can't bondage, right? So Shol thought in Kabbalah. Shmuel said no.
nothing before that, before Shmuel.
But anti-Kabbalist? No. No. So that's really the first place. It's Shmuel. But then in Hosea says also explicitly, Chesed chafatzti v'lo zebach. Chesed chafatzti v'lo zebach. V'das elikim me'olis. You know what Hashem wants? Chesed. Not zebach. And das elikim more than olis. Okay. So here's a clue. Here's a clue for two reasons. First reason why this pasuk is a clue is because when Hosea says that Hashem wants das Hashem, this is very interesting. Because das Hashem is also something that appears all over the Nevi'im and does not appear in the Torah. What does it mean it appears all over the Nevi'im? Yirmiyah says it most explicitly. The only thing a person should be proud of is familiarity with Hashem. And what does familiarity with Hashem mean? Why am I saying familiarity? So people think Yoda means to know something. It doesn't. It means to experience something. Yoda established. We call it familiarity. Or experience.
What does the experience mean?
To experience something.
So
Or to
what
be
do you
familiar
mean
with
to
something.
experience Hashem? What would that mean?
So what does it mean to experience Hashem? So Yirmiyah says also that he didn't only about which king I forgot to do justice. Alohi had asaisi. That's what it means to have das of Hashem. And Yirmiyah says it too, because he says, meaning the other pasuk. But doing is a simon. Right, but doing is a simon. Doing is a simon. Doing is a simon. One second, doing is a simon. Why is doing a simon? Because Hashem's midas are chesed mishpat tzedakah. Everyone lives according to their concept of the essence of reality. You live in accordance the way you typhus reality. So the biggest test of a person having das Hashem is testing his action, because the person doesn't even know what his das is. You can't even know your own life. So we have to have a measure of what's really a person, and the measure of that is his actions. The person does chesed mishpat tzedakah. He's a das Hashem person. He has das Hashem. What does it mean? Let's see if we can explain it. His deepest conception of what's real, what's absolute, is aligned with the midas typhus of Hashem. Does that make sense?
Shmuel said it's Tivua, no?
Shmuel term Yodas Hashem, the pasuk says. He wasn't familiar with it, which tells us that Das Hashem, in its extreme, in its fullness, is communication with Hashem.
The all in the Nevi'im mentioned at the end of Bayis Rishon. Could be weird. Bayis Rishon wasn't working out. The Karbanis weren't working out, so it's saying something else.
Yeah. So look, there's a reason why this message is being stressed now. But again, I insist that as Chazal do, so must we do when we learn Psukim, which is we should flatten them out and just say Kosev Echadayim v'Kosev Echadayim. And historical, contextual answers are not sufficient, because at the end of the day, in the words themselves, there's an inconsistency. And even with everything we're going to say, yes, like I said, there's a reason why that message is being stressed then, but it still has to work out. Push it in the words itself. You have to be able to read one pasuk and read the other pasuk at the same time. You don't have to worry about it. historical context. That's most of a layer of understanding, and it's important. Yes, why is it said now? But you also have to have a tfisa, a havana, where everything.
Chazal never answer like that. They never give historical answers.
Never ever.
I don't think so. No, I think even when they do, they mean to say that itself has to be read into the psukim.
Respond, you just count on that.
Okay.
When did we start giving historical answers?
No, I mean that's a when we stop doing Midrash in a certain sense, in a certain sense.
In the Parsha of Aaron itself, it says Vidat and Kiyani Hashem.
Right. Oh, so now you're asking, how did I say it's not Das Hashem L'Torah?
It's mashma, it's coming off of Ani Hashem.
For
Vidat
sure,
and Kiyani Hashem.
for sure. So on the one hand, okay, firstly we have to understand that Das Hashem is related to Ani Hashem. In other words, the response of a person to Ani Hashem, if Ani Hashem would be completely understood and absorbed, that would equal Das Hashem. And we'll get to this soon. And that's why both by Avram and Yaakov, to whom Hashem said Ani Hashem, there's a response that relates to Das. Avram said, "V'mo'eda ki Yerushalayim," and Yaakov woke up and he said, "Lo yadat." So there was an offer. The offer is Ani Hashem, and taking up the offer would have meant, okay, you have Das Hashem, and both times where they're not fully capable of taking it up, there's a lack of Das. Mo'eda and Lo yadat. So Ani Hashem and Das Hashem go together, which is why it says in Parashas Va'era V'dat Hashem. Let's be asking, how did I say it's not in the Torah?
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to get to it. It's all over the Nevi'im. Again, most explicitly in Nehemiah that says, "Kiyim b'zayis yisal v'sal hasvi yadayis." How does that stem with the pasuk that says Hashem wants you only to do chesed mishpustaka? It's hanuach, because doing chesed mishpustaka means you're tuned in with the truth, with the emes and mitzias, which is Hashem. The Nevi'im say it all the time. Hosea says it numerous times. Ein das elikim ba'aretz. Nehemiah says it. Ishai, Amolad's Deus Hashem, and Shmuel time Yodas Hashem. And David told Shlomo, Da'as Eloki Avicha. It's not in the Torah. Now, what I mean it's not in the Torah? So, as Gersh pointed out, the Torah does say, V'yadatem ki. Torah always says, know that. V'yadatem ki Ani Hashem. What does that mean? It means there's a fact. The fact is, Ki Ani Hashem HaMetzi Yastem. And you will have familiarity with that fact. That's very different than Das Hashem. Adam Yoda es Chava Ishto is one thing, and Adam Yoda that Chava is his wife is a different thing. Very different thing. So to Das Hashem, right?
One is experiential.
No, they're both experiential. One is experiencing the underlying thing, and one is experiencing the fact. I'm not saying that Das has two meanings. That's don't have to say that. Das always means experience. But you can have experience of familiarity with a fact. You can have experience of familiarity with a person. So I can be familiar with you, or I can be familiar with the fact that my son makes me feel phenomenal. Right? They're both true, but those are two different things.
So that's not every das of Elikim, before we came Mitzrayim.
No, key. Vidatim key. No, there is a fact, which is that Hashem was mighty. That it is I who took you out. The fact is that it is I who took you out. And that fact is going to be a fact that's subject to your deal. Which doesn't mean dry knowledge, it means experiential, but it's a fact which you're experiencing and you're familiar with.
So where did the Nevi'im get it from?
Oh, where did the Nevi'im get it from? Right?
That's what Navi means. The Torah says you should be a Navi.
Very good. Okay, good. Does it? Not really, yes.
No.
Weird.
Hashem Nevuah.
In Parashas Shoftim it says Navi Kamoini. It's not Kamoini. Not Kamoini. Coming and saying forget. Okay, this is different shmooze, whatever, if it's in the Torah. But let's
It says Udom Kamoini.
say that. Good. Yeah. Look, maybe this is one of those points where if you leave now, you're going to think I'm saying that the Nevi'im are against the Torah. We'll get to that. Avada versteht sich in the Torah, and I'll show you where, and I'll show you how.
That would be pretty firm.
What?
Said that would be pretty firm.
What?
No.
Yeah. That's his big
It's this kabbanis.
Kabbanis. Right. Good. Right. So, and this was going to share, but that's the community. Yeah, your question?
Sum
Sum up?
Yeah.
Well, we said a few different things so far. So far, we just asked the question. We started with the question of what's the Torah about? Is it about Ani Hashem, or is it about freedom? Plus, where does Torah come in? Torah mitzvahs. And now we're talking about Gemara Chagiga. Now the Gemara Chagiga shifted to Gemara Chagiga Shvei Gemara. The Gemara says Yechayguli Bavimbar. How do we know it means Karbanis? Moshe said Pare, send away Bnei Yisrael Yechayguli Bavimbar. How do we know it means Karbanis? Because it says in always Hasvachim Umim Chagash Bavimbar Bam Shul So the Gemara says that's Harorim Pluim B'Saira because Dibitam Dibik Kabbalah Lefina. And the question we're coming to answer right now is, and so then it's not either nothing or Gzei Shava, but probably nothing. So then we shifted to a third discussion, which is this whole focus on this whole anti-Karbanis of the Nevi'im. That's what we're up to. Okay. Thank you. Tell me if there's any places which is all right. It's good. Good. So this is a clue because Hosea says Das Elokim Me'olis. So if we want to understand this Nagdus of the Nevi'im to Karbanis, apparently that goes together with the promotion of Das Hashem. Now,
what's this passage?
Oh, Chesed Chafatzi Yeshev Vav Vav Ki Chesed Chafatzi L'Zevach V'Das Elokim Me'olis. So everything is consistent. The Torah that says to bring oilus.
This is the most
doesn't.
The first passage that's Makasher.
Yeah. Yes, but yes. As in the expression Das Hashem and Karbanis is the only place. But Amos says Anicha, Hashem wants Chesed and not Karbanis. That and Chesed equals Das Hashem, like it says in Yirmiyah, doing good things. Halohi Hadas I see. And he had asked about this. Can Hashem was a special stock? Shram last back in Mevuchim puts it. He says Ani Hashem. The pasuk in Yirmiyah does not say Hask about this. Can Hashem echad? Ani Hashem sheinu guf. The ultimate is to know Hashem and His midas and to emulate. So all the psukim that say don't do karbanos but do chesed mishpat tzedakah are going along with this idea that the Nevi'im promote Das Hashem. And Das Hashem means or is measured by a person's action. He's most godly. He's most familiar with Hashem deep in his psyche, according to the measure that he's doing in the Darkei Hashem. And apparently those two things are the inverse. Either you promote Das Hashem or you promote others. Now, it does say one place in the Torah something about Das Hashem. There's really a few places that it says it alludes to it. In Sefer Dvar, we're not going to talk about that tonight. But in Sefer Shmos, Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, "Ho'di'inu as derechecha ve'edoacha." So there, ve'edoacha, not ve'edaki, ve'edoacha. Moshe asked to know the ways of Hashem so that he should be familiar with him. That's what ve'edoacha means. So that I be familiar with you, so that I experience you. And
there's no even S over there. It's just
right,
straight to the point.
Right. Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, yeah. The Ma'aseh Moshe was told, no, l'sufa says ponei, not so poshut, no can do, but something complicated. But the response was not yes. That's why Das Hashem is not a Torah. Now we know why. Why is Torah not ever promote Das Hashem? Because Moshe Rabbeinu asked to know Hashem, and he was told, Lo yorani odem v'choy. Lo yorani odem v'choy. If you know the Pesukim well, I'll say this b'kitzur, if you know the Parsha well, it will be relevant. If not, it's not so relevant. Moshe asked for two things. He asked to see Hashem, and he asked to know the ways of Hashem. He said, Hareini no'as kvedecha, and he said, Ho'di'inu no'as techa ve'edoacha. And he was told, Lo yorani odem v'choy, which is obviously a response to Hareini no'as kvedecha. I'm saying it's also a response to Ho'di'inu no'as techa, because I'm putting together Ho'di'inu no'as techa and Hareini no'as kvedecha. What's my right to put that together for now? I'm a Moshe. Gemara Bracha says that Moshe Rabbeinu asked for three things. He asked to know the ways of Hashem. He asked that Nevuah should only be Sheira on Yisrael. And he asked that He asked that Nevuah should be Sheira on Yisrael and that it shouldn't be Sheira on the Umas. I think the Gemara says. But the Gemara puts together the ways of Hashem. The Gemara doesn't say he asked for two things, to know the ways of Hashem and to see Hashem. The Gemara is putting that together, and that's in the Parashat of Kisisa, those two things go together. But in more Bracha stuff, I think it's the both. The Gemara puts together the Bikish laid that Ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Hareini no'as kvedecha, the same thing. And the Midrash says it also. Hareini no'as kvedecha means he wanted to know. Covered means the reward for the tzaddikim and the promise for the Rishon. Moshe wanted to know the ways of Hashem, why they fear, why they mishpat. In other words, he wanted to be yored to the chesed mishpat tzedakah of Hashem, because that way you can emulate it. Because if you know Hashem perfectly, then you emulate Hashem. And he wanted to know the drachim of Hashem, and he was told no. It's complicated, right? There was some answer, right? He was given some answer. The Gemara Bracha says he wanted to know mepnei ma yesh tzaddik v'ra lo yirasha b'teivo. Hashem told him, "Mechanosis sherachim Af Pishene Kedai, I can't explain it. You don't
Pashut
understand.
comes down like the full answer to the
Okay, we're not doing Pashut Pshat. Doing Midrash, I told you already.
No.
No? Not fair?
Why you play I later on?
What? I know, but I'm saying, well, okay, we'll do the Psukim. Kahagan.
Whatever the Psukim say.
No, where he says a choyrai. Where he says lo sucha is ponai.
Dracha is you're going to lose it.
But that's the thing. But the Pasha mixes the two together. Moshe asked one, then he asked the other, and then this is the response to two. So that means that the fact that there's a limit on the Haredi Nah is also a limitation on the and what that means is that he learned that Hashem is Racham B'Chanun, but he didn't learn what determines when he's Racham and what determines when he's Racham. So he learned that ultimately Hashem is Racham B'Chanun, but he couldn't explain why. Now the Moshe came and said Hashem is Racham B'Chanun. You come to Moshe and said, yeah, Hashem is Racham B'Chanun. So how do you explain that story? He said, I can't explain it. Which means that he knew that Hashem is Chana Racham, even though without knowing him, which is not fully knowing, because if you want to fully know Hashem,
Why is that?
because it's knowing something, it's knowing the bottom line, it's knowing what happened.
The bottom line.
I think so. I'm not sure. Not sure about that. Okay, that's very complicated. That's B'kitzur Nimrod. We'll see how much we get to that. What the Achayre is. No, what's this? Okay. Good. So now let's understand a little bit better. The steer between the Torah and the Nevi'im. So first of all, Moshe asked to know Hashem / see Hashem. Let's put the two together. Seeing Hashem and knowing Hashem goes together. That's a Gemara Brachos. And he was told you can't see Hashem. This is also a steer between the Torah and the Nevi'im. It's Gemara Yevamos Daf Tesam Beis. That King Menashe, put Yeshaya Hanavi on trial. Made him die Nevikatla. He killed Yeshaya Navi and he judged him. He said, Moshe Rabcha Omar Kilo Yerani Yodim B'chai. And you say V'aras Hashem?
Why did you play Cheskel Sman?
Yeah, because he was didn't do time travel. What?
He would have.
Yeah. I mean, it was negated to him. Why was Menashe Kanoi for Teres Moshe's But it was beyond. Yeshaya was beyond. And Yeshaya was the first to say V'aras Hashem. Big deal. V'aras Hashem. What are you talking about? Torah says Lo Yerani Yodim B'chai. Comes Yeshaya and says V'aras Hashem Yeshua Kiz. He's slicing the player. So that's what Menashe says. And he killed him for that. Sorry, I said, how do we answer this? So the Gemara Tanya, Kol Hanavim is Nabu be'aspaklaya she'en me'ir. Moshe Rabbeinu is Nabe be'aspaklaya me'ir. All the Nevi'im saw with a glass, through an unclear glass. And Moshe Rabbeinu saw through a clear glass. So what does it mean he saw through a clear glass? Says Rashi, since all the Nevi'im saw through a unclear glass, so V'aras Hashem, they thought they saw. That's what Rashi says. So let me tell you what that means. What's called seeing? What's called seeing? What's the word seeing? What's called seeing? If you have someone who has very, very limited vision, let's say someone's blind, completely blind, then he gains a mashu of vision that he can detect if it's light or dark. It's very bright. Is that vision? It's the same physics, photons going through. But people who are blessed with sight wouldn't even call that sight. He might call that sight, because relative to the darkness that he was in, the fact that he can know, certainly if he could see a form pass in front of his eyes, know that there's someone in the room, he already has able to use some information, or at least even to know day or night. So what seeing is different for different people. Moshe Rabbeinu knows he's on a level of hasaga that for him, what can be understood of Hashem, what can be known of Hashem, is not called seeing. For the Nevi'im, what they can be masig of Hashem, for everyone below from Moshe Rabbeinu, what they can be masig of Hashem, since the way they think in general is a lower level than Moshe Rabbeinu. So what they apply to Hashem is called seeing. And same thing when it comes to knowledge. Moshe Rabbeinu is told you can't know Hashem, and these two things go together. Moshe Rabbeinu has to know Hashem, he has to see Hashem. Two things go together. So the stira that the Gemara asks between Moshe Rabbeinu saying you can't see Hashem and Yishai Navi saying you could see Hashem is the same exact stira that I'm asking that Moshe says you can't know Hashem. Or the Torah, it's missing in the Torah. And the Nevi'im say no Hashem, no Hashem. Same answer. Depends what it means to know something or familiar. What does it mean to have experience of something? What does it mean to be familiar with something? A certain kind of intelligence, a certain darga of thought might not consider it yediyah until it reaches a certain level. And that level does not apply to Hashem. If yediyah for you is a lower level, it does apply to Hashem. So Pashat, you'll have one person saying, I saw something, because he uses the word seeing differently. Everyone uses the word seeing to be about something that has to do with sight. It gives them a certain kind of knowledge. But what degree of clarity is necessary depends on your vision in general. And what degree you would call the word das about something depends on the nature of your das. So there's like think of it as a superhuman. We know what das is. The level that we know what das is, say the Nevi'im, you can know Hashem. That's the Nevi'im say. You should know Hashem. And if you know Hashem, you'll be a Navi. If you take what you call das, and you apply it to Hashem, you reach that level, you'll be a Navi. For Moshe Rabbeinu, he's doing something else legamri. And for him, das means something which, when you attempt to apply it to Hashem, it fails. Like Riyah.
I mean, the Psukim still don't read together.
One is Moshe speaking, one is the Nevi'im speaking. Lo kam Navi ke Moshe means that everything the Navi says, everything the Navi says you have to understand is coming from this paradigm. The reason why Ein Navi Rashai L'Chadash Davar. So what was the question? How can the Nevi'im come talk about Das Hashem? The answer is like this: I Ein Navi Rashai L'Chadash Davar. That's, you know why Ein Navi Rashai L'Chadash Davar? Why not? Because they're not Moshe Rabbeinu. Wait, fix it. Yeah. He's waiting for that. Should I not
So you knew.
What? Looks like it's good.
So the reason why Ein Navi Rashai L'Chadash Davar Me'ata is because the Nevi'im are not Moshe Rabbeinu. Why are they not Moshe Rabbeinu? Because what they call Das and what they call Riyah is, which are the most fundamental things of being a Navi, is to see and to know. They use those words differently than Moshe Rabbeinu does.
So
and the way they use those words, they can apply to Hashem.
It's a chashivas in Moshe Rabbeinu. It's what? He realized that there's much more to see.
Yeah.
They didn't realize there's more to see.
That's what Rashi says. Right? In other words, everything that they're saying is from their perspective, which is the most perspective a human being can reach. But no one can reach Madrega Moshe Rabbeinu. I mean, imagine like a marshal. Imagine a creature of super intelligence would come to Earth and tell us that everything we think we know is really the greatest folly and delusion and ignorance. And we believed him, we understood him. But Maisa, for us, what would we do then? It's good. So that's Moshe Rabbeinu. It means there was once one person who told us that whatever is Das for us and Riyah for us is really Shum Davar, nothing. It's not Das, not Riyah. And ultimately, we don't know anything. But we'll never know that. We'll never know that we don't know anything. We'll from our perspective, we could know Hashem. In other words, what we call Das, which is what we have to do, we have to be humans. From our mitzvahs, what's shy for us, we can know Hashem fully.
What's wrong?
So what do you mean by wrong? It's right for this machine, this mitzvah called human being, to be mashlim himself, and to be mashlim yourself means to have das. And if you mashlim yourself, you will have das Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu is reminding us all the time that this is all a kasvurim. Okay, so what should I do? What should I do? The kasvurim is all we have. It's one big kasvurim. The whole world is one big kasvurim. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is megal. The whole world is one big kasvurim. Okay, very nice. So now what? Oh, so now what? Let's figure this out. What do we do now? What do we do? But let's first talk about kabbalah. So what has to do with the kabbalah?
Wait, what does Rabbi mean? What do we do? What's the kasha?
I disturbed this young man.
Which part?
It's folly. Basically,
What are you doing?
what are you doing?
Why are we doing anything?
If everyone would have
Forget about it.
One say it's stupid, so do it.
Yeah. Why are we doing anything?
Do
Why are
what?
we
The
doing anything?
mitzvah?
No, Chesed Mishpat Tzedakah.
What? Oh.
No, that's Hashem.
Right,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
Hashem.
that's
That's Hashem. Chesed Mishpat Tzedakah. That's Hashem.
If it's
Yeah. Let me explain what this means. Let's talk about the steer about. Let's not talk about the steer about Kabbalah for a second. Let's talk about Chesed Mishpat Tzedakah for a moment. Why is the pasuk going to share another clue? What?
Moshe's Veidach that he's discussing will never happen.
Right.
You see, it's a different one. Yeshaya says,
So
no,
now-
it's Hashem, it's different that.
Maybe yeah, maybe not. So the Gemara says like this, not the Gemara. The Tikkun Zohar says that Lo Yoani Odin B'Choy Ad Des Avra V'Shoich Mitamon, until that darkness is removed, because the Moshe asked for it. So what do you mean? It's never going to happen. He asked for it. It's not. It does. Tikkun Zohar says till that darkness is removed. Okay. So we'll see if we get to remove the darkness at the end of this year. Gosh, we're not going to make it that far. Okay, good.
Until the darkness is removed.
Until that darkness is removed. In other words, the darkness is a screen that blocks Hashem.
Until the
Your mind.
Asmaglaria is removed.
Right, but no,
Or you're
no,
gonna die.
no, the opposite. Whatever, it's complicated. The
It's not like you're
Nevi'im,
gonna die. If you see, then you're gonna die. If you just see the darkness, what? It's not like what I'm seeing is a problem, not that there's something black.
no, yeah, what was blocking is being alive, being a glove. No, that is blocking. That is blocking. Name of Hashem means you cannot be Masik Hashem without dying. You could be Masik Hashem, it's very easy, but you're going to die. But the Gemara says, the Torah Kohanim says it. B'shas Misasim Roim. I think it's Rikiva said it's bad. Important. Chayim Ein Roim, B'shas Misasim Roim.
But seeing is different than knowing.
No, I'm saying it's synonymous. Moshe Rabbeinu asked us to see Hashem and
So
to
how
know Hashem.
can us know beyond our? It sounds like we can reach our potential of knowing. Moshe couldn't, but we can.
But no,
We
but I'm saying
become
but
Nevi'im,
Moshe's
we don't die.
Moshe's Madrega of Yediyah is possible only for those who are dying. That's not possible with the body. What Moshe asks for is possible to reach.
But for
But then-
me,
but then
it's
you can't
not
be
possible. Even if I wanted to see on Moshe's level and die, I wouldn't.
No, you would die. Of course you would die.
But I can't see on Moshe's level. My
You
eyes
could.
don't
Shas
even
Misasim
work
Roim.
that way.
No, you b'shas misasim, you could have Moshe's level of das. You're asking a different question. You're asking if a person whose whole life was using the word das like the Nevi'im did, what's going to happen when he dies? Right? That's what you're touching at.
how to become
It's
the
a question.
supernatural.
Huh? No. Where is it going?
The reason
You're saying, okay, what was unique about Moshe? Okay, this is a very good question. Let's.
the reason why certain
Bracket
things, certain
It's a good question.
nevuos
That's a
are
bracket.
chalem is because you have that.
Yeah, but they still have a goal. They still have a
The
goal.
mystic of chalem. Chalem is your master things more.
And the body's out of the way. The
Like,
body and its
on the other
demands, its
side,
emotions.
halfway.
Right. Machai means you can't be alive at all. No pulse. Nothing. Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. So the Pasuk in Yeshaya is a clue for two reasons. Pasuk in Yeshaya is a clue because it says that the question of Kavanas is connected to Das Hashem, which is not in the Nevi'im, which is not in the Torah. And also because Yeshaya says clearly it's one or the other. Das Elokim me oilis. Hashem wants Das Hashem, not oilis. Hashem, I have both. Can you do both? Why is it one or the other?
Why oilers the mashal match?
Yeah, because oilus is the habit of das. So it goes like this. What if a person has das Hashem? In other words, what does it mean to have das Hashem? Full understanding of Hashem. Full understanding. Let's go back before the Torah, before anything. Okay? On this world, nothing happening. How should we guide our lives? So if a person has das Hashem, a person has full understanding of Hashem. So what's Chavasa B'Elamim? To emulate Hashem. Be like Hashem. If you understand Hashem, you understand what the world is about. So become a part of it. Proper life. Live up to what to the mitzvahs, which is Hashem and His actions. Chesed Mishpat Tzedakah. So when the Nevi'im say all Hashem wants is Chesed Mishpat Tzedakah, does Hashem? It makes perfect sense. Because if you can know Hashem, which remember for the Nevi'im means the limit of knowledge, the absolute limit of knowledge, what they call das can be applied to Hashem. If you can take das and apply it to Hashem, then that's what you're supposed to do. What if what you call das does not apply to Hashem? So that means that what are we doing? Nothing we do has any meaning, as you asked. Nothing we do has any meaning is expressed most significantly in Karbanis. Because Karbanis, which is a sacrifice of the self, suicide essentially, or a homicide, what's it called? Avram tried to kill Yitzchak, right? With a kid. And that's where Kabbalah comes. That's the Chazal say. When after the Akedah, Hashem said, that means the real carbon is the real carbon is the Akedah. No, the real carbon is the Akedah. So saying the Chazal say that after the Akedah, that's when we have the Kevas Echatasa, that's the Chinuch of Ha'amariya, and of the establishment of Karbonis. That from now on a person is in the place, an animal is in the place of a person. It's because there was a demonstration that really you could sacrifice yourself, or his son, Avram's son, or Yitzchak himself. So let's call it suicide, okay? The real question of philosophy, so one of the great philosophers, or not so great philosophers said, the only question of philosophy is suicide. What that means is like this.
Why does Hashem say it's so bad in Dvarim?
Philosophy.
Hashem says about the Dvarim, that Moshe Rabbeinu in Dvarim says about the Dvarim, that they're machzor their kids, they're machzor.
Right.
Why is it so bad?
Oh, okay, interesting. Good, very interesting question. Very interesting. Interesting. I don't know what to think of it. It's a very interesting question. Now, in Sefer Devarim, parenthetically, is where Das Hashem is alluded to, by implication. Because in Sefer Devarim it says, don't serve the gods, Asher lo yedatem. It says it 6 times. Elohim lo yedom. And Nechon avd Elohim achem Asher lo yedatem. So Sefer Devarim implies that the reason why we should serve Hashem is because we do have Him. It's only in Devarim.
We don't not know.
But even there in Devarim it's only by implication. And that's because, right? Exactly. And that's because Devarim is the bridge between Moshe and Nevi'im. It's Elah HaDevarim. Moshe's Lo Yesh Devarim. Says the Midrash now, he says Elah HaDevarim. Because Lo Yesh Devarim is the one who can't see Hashem and has nothing to say about Hashem. Cannot have Das Hashem. So Lo Yesh Devarim. And then comes Ish Devarim, Elah HaDevarim, and he's going to the Mechanech, the Ma'avar, the bridge between Moshe and the Nevi'im. Which may have to do with that also. That's also key. Know that. Know something. Know that X. We'll be familiar with X, with a fact. Key. So what if ultimately everything is one big kasvura? That means everything that we think we understand about Hashem, everyone besides Moshe. Moshe tells us it's all a mirage. And not even I can't explain to you why. I can just tell you that. Just tell you that this all doesn't add up. So now, that very fact, that there is nothing which we can insist and assert has value, that becomes the most significant fact. Why? Because if we value, why is the most fundamental question of philosophy suicide? If you value your own life, if you say, look, that I know is worth something. Okay, so you value your own life. Okay, so maybe you should value someone else's life. Maybe you should value all the things that support life, like chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah. But if you start questioning the value of even the most basic fundamental value, which is that you should be alive, then there's nothing to build on. All values are based on this most basic fundamental value of you should be alive. If you can question that, then you can question everything. Moshe Rabbeinu says you can question everything. And if you can question everything, the fact that you can question everything, the fact that there is nothing that you can absolutely assert and commit to being of value, becomes the most important feature of reality. So from the perspective of Moshe Rabbeinu, Karbonos is actually the most important thing.
Most important,
because it puts everything in proper perspective of reality. Right, most representative of what's going on, because it puts everything else, all your kasvurim, you have to constantly reminding yourself that it's a kasvurim. There's nothing more important than that. Nothing more relating to the core truth. Then the fact that everything is a mirage or a kasvurim. So Mamela, now we understand the Maikamifili, so to speak.
Did he ever bring Karbonos himself, or he was just telling us Moshe? He was just telling us.
He brought Karbonos. Yeah, and also Hasina, right? So the way it goes is like this: the Nevi'im's job is to be Nevi'im, as Moshe, but they're not Moshe. So because they're not Moshe, therefore the Torah is closed. The Nevi'im are now doing something that's not Moshe, which is what? Which is reaching Das Hashem. And the Navi who reaches Das Hashem says, Korbanos says no pshat. That's what the Navi's job is. The Navi's job is to speak out the implications of Das Hashem. The implications of Das Hashem are, what do you mean you're killing something? What do you mean you're killing something? The Hepech of Mishpach has Mishpach. Hashem doesn't want you to kill things, he wants idols. It's one or the other. You can't kill things and have Das Hashem. You certainly can't kill a person. You can't say, I would kill myself. Hashem, fishy. Or you want to kill your firstborn? It's the opposite of what Hashem wants. It's the opposite. And that's the Nevi'im's job, is to reach the shleimus of Das for Nevi'im, which is to have Das Hashem. So they have to present the implications of Das Hashem. Now the Torah says not to bring Korbanos. The Torah says to bring Korbanos. There is Moshe's Hasaga. So now, what do we do? What do we do? In other words, we have two worlds over here. Like going back to Hamashal. An alien comes to us, a superhuman intelligence, and tells us that everything we think is really wrong. So what do we do then? Should we live our whole lives in absurdity and not believe anything we believe in? And why should we do that? That's doing an injustice to our being, to ourself. And ourself, meaning us, because we're all Pachs from Moshe. Ourself is Yidei Hashem.
The question.
What?
Ourselves.
We know that as a fact that we accept from the super intelligence, but we cannot explain it. Very big difference. We don't understand. It's very important to understand this. The Nevi'im are Kasruim, they don't understand why it's Lo Yira'u. They understand, and they're going to defend, we have Das Hashem, because that's their understanding. They accept on faith that there was once someone who was surpassed them and says it's impossible. So I recommend to you to imagine if we had something like that today, that everything that we consider to be reason and we live by, all our values, all our thoughts, all our logic, if we had something on faith, some super intelligence that we believe for some reason, who demonstrated to us, again, not demonstrated logically that we can understand, but just told us in a way that we know is true, that it's all imperfect. So we have a tension. There's going to be a tension. And the tension, I submit, for now at least, meaning for the last thousands of years, and going into the future, but in the Bible, what we have to do is, we have to live with that tension. On the one hand, we're going to say, the Nevi'im are going to say, because that's all we could be, is Nevi'im, can't be Moshe. We have to say, what do you mean, Korbanos makes no sense, it's wrong. That's what we have to say, because otherwise we're not being fair to Das, we're not being fair to Das Hashem. But we're also going to bring Korbanos. So Yeshaya said, Loma li roiv zuchayim.
Why are we bring Korbanos?
So why do we bring Korbanos? Because in homage, meaning to acknowledge that truth that we believe but cannot explain. And why does the Navi not talk about Korbanos? Because that's not a Navi's job. It's Moshe, there's nothing to say about it anymore. Moshe said everything, there's nothing to say. They can't talk such words. They can learn Torah, but they can't, as Nevi'im, they can't say bring Korbanos, because the Chefetz of a Navi is to say, is Das Hashem, we don't bring Korbanos.
But how could they say?
Bring Korbanos, Moshe said to bring Korbanos.
How could they say Mibiki Shleis Mi'atchem?
Because they're saying it as a Navi. The Navi's perspective, they had a Nevuah, they had a clarity of Nevuah that this doesn't belong anywhere. And then you look at the Torah, and the Torah says do it anyways, so vice versa is something that we don't understand. That's all. They said something we don't understand. Mibiki Shleis Mi'atchem was another way of saying this doesn't make any sense.
It's not Nevuah Shaka?
No.
No, he's saying in their understanding.
No, not right. In their understanding.
They're not saying they don't understand this. They don't do it.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that they did it. I'm submitting that they did it. They're saying we don't understand. It's not true. You have to realize. You have to realize something. There's no
So when the Bacham
everyone likes books so much. One second. Everyone likes books so much. They get all excited because it's steers. Steers in books are nothing. Steers only exist in reality. So you show me the Navi didn't bring a carbon. Then we can talk. Oh, he said something. Say it. So I'm telling you, he said, "This is what I want to say. This is what I have to say. This is the shleimus of my das, is to say that Korbanos have no pshat. This is what it means to be a Navi, is to recognize that Korbanos are hepech of das. That's what it means to be a Navi. Now you can come to the Navi and you say, the Torah says that, like, you want me to be Moshe Rabbeinu? Of course, Moshe Rabbeinu said to do it, so we'll do it. We'll do it even though it makes no sense to us. We'll do it because it makes no sense to us.
It's supposed to live both worlds?
Yeah.
Why is it?
In both worlds, because you have to be a Navi, because you can't be Moshe Rabbeinu. But you also believe that there was this higher level of revelation.
Why is it important to acknowledge
Because you believe
that?
that's true. So that's what I said. I want you to think about, what do you recommend in my hypothetical case where this superintelligence comes and says everything we believe?
Who cares? Doesn't make any difference at all.
No, it does, because there's a part of us that knows that everything is wrong. We have to acknowledge that, right?
Why does it make a difference?
Because it's true.
Yeah, it's unusable, completely unusable.
What?
Okay, so good.
There's knowledge.
So that means
everything's
if I say, because we're
So
hoping one day to meet.
Oh, very good. So I want to restate the question like this. If once upon a time, thousands of years ago, there was this revelation, but it has no bearing for the future, then we're never going to get back to it. Then who cares?
Right.
So in other words, it must be that somehow the revelation of Moshe is
What's the
somehow...
point of acknowledging that? Everything we know really isn't.
Right, that's what you're saying. You're saying the question over now.
Yeah, I'm saying the question. If this is one time in the past, we had this revelation of superintelligence, but it's never going to have any ramifications for the future,
So
what's the point of acknowledging it? That's your question. Yeah? So that means really what we're laying the groundwork now, this whole discussion is really the first slab of seeing maybe how...
Wait, because then you'll think you'll know everything. If you
So
didn't have
what?
it, you'll
The
think you'll
Maisa-
know everything.
Right, so what? What's the difference?
You
If-
open
if-
Kabbalah.
No, that's asking. That's why bring Kabbanis. Why bring Kabbanis in acknowledgement
The
of this
whole
fact
Kabbanis
that has
only
nothing to do with
makes
anyone but for Moshe, who's
something
nifter?
of the
Wait, I'm
past.
saying what's the problem if everyone thinks they know everything?
If they can actually have Das Hashem.
What's our-
What's
what's the
from
point?
from-
Why-
he can have Das Hashem.
Yeshaya was planning the time.
Right, exactly.
Why would
Right.
the Torah itself us to live in such a world that we have no
Right,
shaykhs?
exactly. Because we're saying Pshat, trying to say Pshat.
That we could be completely Masik Hashem.
That's what the Nevi'im say.
What?
That's what the Nevi'im say. That's
Is
what the Nevi'im
Kabbalah
say.
the only thing in the Torah that
So
Yeah, but
yes,
they're aware,
Whole
right?
time, when the Navi says Kiyam Asay Mishpat, he's also rejecting lots of things, right?
Yeah, rejecting
But
the
the
whole
truth, he's
Torah.
rejecting the law as such. He's rejecting the law. In other words, he's rejecting all dinim. What?
Not dinner, not
He's
dinner.
rejecting anything that doesn't fit into Chesed Mishpat. Stop.
Many mitzvahs.
No, so I'm saying it's law as such. Meaning, you can say like this: when there's a law in the Torah, any law, any mitzvah, why do you do it? If you do it because you think it's right, that means it's Chesed Mishpat. Chesed Mishpat are the three parameters of what's right. But the Torah is a law, meaning the Torah is mitzvahs and laws, which you have to do them whether you think they're right or not. In fact, the whole purpose of a law is for the person who doesn't think it's right. The person who thinks it's right to put on tefillin doesn't need a mitzvah. Put on tefillin anyway. So the Nevi'im are ba'etzim rejecting the whole notion of law, because the whole notion of law is assuming you can't have perfect das. It really goes together. The Torah as law, meaning the fact that we have this concept called laws that we don't understand, is assuming that the way we're supposed to go about life is not with perfect understanding.
Maybe.
But Kabbanis is one step. So Kabbanis is the Spitz example or primary expression of lack of das, but really all laws as such are a function of not having das Hashem. If you have das Hashem, you don't need law. You know how to live. You know what to do. In each situation, you know what to do.
They mean that for law, maybe they just mean the optional law. Like,
But
maybe they mean the optional law. It comes to like to bring an oil to Chesed Mishpat.
Right.
Means dinim. They're saying you don't need dinim. Halachas.
yeah, Kiyam Asay Mishpat, Avos Chesed, yeah, yeah.
These are all extra credit, no?
What, the Navi? No,
It's the same thing.
Kiyam, just that. All Hashem wants is that. All Hashem wants is that.
Did the Nevi'im know? Were they aware of the fact that Moshe was a greater Navi than them and didn't know?
I think so. Yeah. Yes.
But they still thought that they knew completely to
It's
the
not that they
max?
thought. It's not that they thought. The word, what they called das applied to Hashem, and what you call das does apply to Hashem.
But
It's
they
a
knew
word,
what
it's
they
all
called
words.
Das
We're playing
was-
word games.
But they knew that what they called Das was wrong. Was not great.
No, it is das. It is das. In other words, taking das to mean the most fundamental driver of the human psyche, where he's holding it is previous. Can that be tuned into Hashem? For them, yes. For Moshe, not. It's not that they're wrong. It's that the essence of a human is his das. Like, what are you all about? What's your basic, most fundamental belief in reality? For them, Hashem does occupy that space. For Moshe Rabbeinu, it doesn't. So that's a fact. It's not that they were wrong. That's a fact. It's a fact. For their orientation and how they relate to things, Hashem's essence, Hashem's midas, takes up that space. Moshe
Was the obvious type of das of Moshe or
so
Navi?
so get to those. Should we take a little break? It's
Can we speak through the break?
yeah, of course. It's just
So they say they know the reasons for
After this whole mission statement of the mention,
Yeah.
it says Blisham one which
Right. That's the most important part.
Oh, okay.
Get to
Dude, that's a huge tragedy. Kaiser missed the boat.
missed the whole book. Exactly. Good. So now, so how do we solve the problem? So how do we solve one of the problems that we got up to, and then we're going to go start unraveling the other ones. With this, we're going to go unravel the Gemara Chagiga, and then back to the core question we start. So what are we up to is trying to understand why the Nevi'im say aren't a karbonis, and why instead they promote Das Hashem, and why it's one or the other. So that's the answer. The answer is, if you have Das Hashem, then that's all you need to know. Do like Hashem. That's what you have to do. If you can't have Das Hashem, then that becomes the most important thing, and that's given most expression by karbonis, particularly oilus, I think you asked, because oilus is completely destroyed. There's no purpose at all. It's the anti-value. Oilus is the greatest expression of rejection of the most fundamental value, which is life. Yitzchak was an oila, and therefore oilus stand in antithesis to chesed mishmur tzedakah more than anything else. So it's one or the other, either karbonis or das Hashem, and now ultimately they're both realities. In other words, the Nevi'im have to be mashal their das, which is to say have das Hashem and do chesed mishmur and not being karbonis. That's what my das says, and at the same time there's the Torah. Why do we do those Moshe? Why do we care about Moshe? If that's a one-time thing, interesting question. Well, is it because ultimately the two are going to come together? I think so, and that's where things get very interesting. We're not going to get to now. So now let's go back to the Gemara.
What do you mean? Why do we need Moshe?
No, that question asked before.
We only do karbonis because of Moshe.
No, the question asked before. What do we care? Why is it important to us? If from our perspective that we have das, and we can know Hashem, and that's all we can do, we can never get past that to know that we don't know Hashem. Why should we acknowledge that there was once upon a time a person who told us that everything is only kisvurim, only the way it appears to us? Why is that interesting to us?
As opposed to Moshe saying, "Oh, I understand it. Just trust me."
No, even then, trust me that what? Trust me that you can't know Hashem. Okay, so what? But we do know Hashem. I trust Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's say I do trust Moshe Rabbeinu. I trust Moshe Rabbeinu that everything that we call das really cannot apply to Hashem. Okay, but so what? Only Moshe Rabbeinu knows that. It has nothing to do with me. It will never have to do with me. Once in history, there was something about this.
According to like the Rambam, it says so knowing part of knowing Hashem. That's the fact that He's unknowable is the most important thing.
Yes.
Knowing Hashem.
Yes.
So it's actually.
But if the Nevi'im know Hashem, then they know Hashem. Where the Rambam fits into this, and whether I was talking about the same thing or not, is a whole different conversation. Whole different conversation. The Nevi'im are the ones who medamet through the Yetzer. The Nevi'im do give form to Hashem. Okay, that is a whole nother shmuz. That's a whole nother shmuz. How the Moreh Nevuchim fits into this. It's a different conversation. Okay. So let's go back to Gemara Chagiga. The Gemara Chagiga says that Moshe Rabbeinu said to Paroi, Shalach es ami koyamar Hashem lekeso shalach es ami v'yochaygu didarim. And that means to bring karbonis, because the pasuk says in Amos, "Hazvach momincha yigashni b'avim b'avam shal beis Yisrael." That's on, and therefore when Torah says l'chagosim chag l'Hashem, it also means karbonis. But that's haram tuli b'saira, because divrei kabbalah and divrei Torah. We asked, so why is it a saira? Why is this divrei Torah and divrei kabbalah serve as a saira? Right.
See that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they meant.
What? They actually did bring karbonis.
They don't like the pirate. They said they need to go make.
Right. Yeah. Good. The Maisa when the pasuk says in Amos, says V'ochem u'mincha gashni b'midbar b'amshana, which is being soiser shalach zami yochaygu didarim, because the Torah says they brought karbonos in the midbar. Let's just ask a question like that. In Amos it says you didn't bring karbonos in the midbar, and the Torah says it did bring karbonos in the midbar. Gemara talks about that. So in the midbar, Gemara talks about it. But Lemaisa, let's just bracket that. The pasuk in Amos seems to be contradicting v'chogli b'midbar. In Parshas Moshe it says we want to go to the midbar to bring Hashem karbanos, and Amos says Hashem doesn't want karbanos in the midbar. So that's a deliberate contradiction, meaning to say the fact that the Navi says the midbar Hashem doesn't want karbanos in the midbar, the fact that we read the Torah and it says go to the midbar to bring karbanos, are supposed to be read in antithesis to each other. What the actual teretz is in that practical metzias, did they or did not bring karbanos? I'm not going to go to that. But you're supposed to read those psukim against each other. So Mamela, the pasuk in Amos that says is a proper giloi that Shalach Ami v'choyguli b'midbar, which is one of those places in the Torah that maybe the Navi is talking against, and he uses the same word. So it's a proper giloi that v'choyguli b'midbar means karbanos. But it's not a true gzeira shava because divrei Torah divrei kabbalah le'afina. But you know why divrei Torah divrei kabbalah le'afina? Because the Nevi'im and the Torah are doing two antithetical things. That's why divrei Torah divrei kabbalah le'afina. If the Nevi'im were Moshe Rabbeinu and they were doing the same thing as Moshe Rabbeinu, they being Mamshe Moshe Rabbeinu, then you would make Zeir Shabbos. The reason why you don't make Zeir Shabbos is because it's Torah L'chud and Nevi'im L'chud. And Torah L'chud and Nevi'im L'chud is expressed more than any place else in the fact that the Nevi'im say don't bring karbanos. So the pasuk in Amos is a proper limud, but it's a saira, because normally we make Zeir Shabbos. Here it's like an anti-Zeir Shabbos, meaning to say it's the fact that the pasuk is soiserit, which tells us we're supposed to read this pasuk in tandem. That's my issue for the Gemara Chagig. Okay. Now, let's go back to the story over here in Parshas Shmos. Moshe comes to Hashem and says,
"Why is this steer? If Chaim means
because here it says Yechoyguli b'midbar and
Amos itself might not mean
correct, but Amos was supposed to read Amos, who was opposing the Torah, so to speak, by saying not to be karbanos. We look for where in the Torah is he talking to, and we find a midbar that he's talking to.
I forgot to shine a pasuk to find the steer too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an anti-example.
Find the cash and that's the time.
Yeah. In other words, especially in that pasuk in the Navi where he's coming to say not like the Torah. So the pasuk in the Torah that uses the lashon,
obviously the pasuk in the Torah,
right? The pasuk in the Torah that uses the word, which might mean that it's probably the pasuk that means that. So maybe it's a proper gilui that it means that. But it's a saira. It's a saira. It's around to say. Okay. Moshe Rabbeinu came to Pari and said, "Shalach asami v'chigid b'midbar," and Pari said, "Lo yadati es Hashem." Lo yadati es Hashem. Yeah. That's what he said. Lo yadati es Hashem. Mi Hashem asher eshmel b'kola lo yadati es Hashem. And Moshe went back to Hashem and said, Lama ha'reis lama zeh shlachtani. And the answer is not clear. The answer has something to do with Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and with Ani Hashem, and with Shmi Hashem lo yadati lachem. Right? So I want to tell you this. I think we'll have to do Mekatzer a little bit in this Nakuda about what's going on over here. And this has to do with what you raised, that the message to Bnei Yisrael of Ani Hashem was not accepted. Moshe Rabbeinu thought that he's coming with a message of Das Hashem. He's coming with a message of Das Hashem. That's his shlichus. His shlichus is like the shlichus of all the Nevi'im. That's him. The shlichus of the Nevi'im is to bring knowledge of Hashem, to bring familiarity with Hashem. Not only is that the shlichus of the Nevi'im, but Moshe Rabbeinu himself sought that. He said, so that is the ultimate for Moshe. The ultimate would have been if even Moshe could have had Das Hashem. So he thought, okay, we're doing that right now. Agav, this is also important, the Nissen Goyen and Sefer Kabbalah, Ravid, say that Nevuah lasted to be Yisrael for 1,000 years. So that 1,000 years starts from Tzias Mitzrayim. So even though there were Nevi'im prior to Tzias Mitzrayim, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Moshe, not equated, but only when the Bnei Yisrael were redeemed is it considered the Tkufa that Das Hashem begins. And this has to do with the fact that the message to Bnei Yisrael of Ani Hashem starts with Tzias Mitzrayim, which we'll explain soon. So Moshe Rabbeinu thought, okay, the time of Nevuah has arrived. The time, which is to say, the time of Das Hashem. I'm coming to bring knowledge of Hashem from Yahweh Hashem to the world. He goes to Parai, and Parai says, Lo yadati is Hashem. And instead of Geula, instead of Chesed Mishpat and Tzedakah, Hashem does Tzadik Garalai. Moshe didn't understand. Lama Harayos, Lama Zeh. Lama Zeh Shlachtani. Lama Zeh Shlachtani. I thought my Shlichus is a Shlichus of to bring Das. Instead, we have a rejection of Das. Hashem said to Moshe, so we raised the question before, the stira, that in Sefer Bereshis it does say Ani Hashem to Avram and to Yaakov. However, in both of those instances, there was a response, both by Avram and by Yaakov, and the response was an expression of inability to have Das. Hashem said to Avram, Ani Hashem, Asher Tzisicha Mor Kazdim, and Avram said, Bamo Eda Ki Hashem. And Yaakov said, Hashem came to Avram, to Yaakov, Ani Hashem Elokei Avram Avicha Elokei Yitzchak, and Yaakov says, Ochen Yesh Hashem Amor Vazev Anechi Lo Yodat.
By Avram, he's referring to Das Hashem.
Yeah. Yes, because it goes like this. Ani Hashem Asher Tzisicha means that the Das Hashem is going to be totally in the Yerusha Sa'aretz. Los Sa'aretz of the Mishnah, like we says in Va'era, that to have Tfis Ani Hashem, you need Yerusha Sa'aretz. So Avram says this notion of Yerusha Sa'aretz, which I have to have familiarity with in order to have familiarity with Hashem, because it goes together, not having Das on that. And so what's Yadea Teite Kigei Yezrach, like the Gemara says in the Torah, because Avram said Bama'eda, it means Son and Das Hashem. Son and Das Hashem leads to Shibud Mitzrayim. So we read that as a chait, like the Gemara Dharm says, Pnei Ma Nenesh Avram Avinu V'Nishtab L'Bonav Mitzrayim 110 years, because he said Bama'eda. Hifriz Amidoisu Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem said Ani Hashem Tzisich, and he said Bama'eda. Means he wasn't able to accept the offer of Das Hashem that was given to him. And same thing by Yaakov. So we think it's a chait. But now we learn from the Torah, from writing the Torah, we'll get back to this conversation between Moshe and Hashem, that actually the inability to have Das Hashem is a feature of Nebuas Moshe. So if we talk about Nevi'im and Moshe Rabbeinu, someone asked before, what about the office? Where does the office fit in? Are the office Nevi'im of Das Hashem, or are they Nevi'im of like Moshe Rabbeinu? The answers are in between. Because on the one hand, they had the offer of Ani Hashem, but on the other hand, they responded with an inability to have Das. And as the Gemara in the Dharm says, it's a chait. It's a chait. It's a chait from the perspective of the Nevi'im who say you should have Das Hashem. It's a chait. But from the perspective of the Torah, which the others are initiating, and the Torah is predicated on the fact that Hashem cannot be fully known, because that's why there's kabbalas and that's why there are laws, and mitzvahs. From that perspective, not having Das Hashem, they're onto something. Avram saying B'ma'eda and Yaakov saying Lo Yadati. They're foreshadowing that Moshe is going to bring in or complete this hanhaga of Lo Yadati. So this is the conversation. Moshe comes to Parai and says Yechoy Gili B'midbar. And parenthetically, if you're following the cheshbon over here, he said Yechoy Gili B'midbar means to bring karbanis. But I just in the Hoshtek Torah was that karbanis is based on Lo Yadati. And then I said Parai said Lo Yadati is Shem Moshe Lakash. But I think that really Yechoy Gili B'midbar could mean Yechoy Gili Chingba, meaning like a holiday. Originally Moshe came to Parai and said Yechoy Gili B'midbar, we're going to party. Then when Parai said Lo Yadati is Hashem, and Moshe says, Lama Hariyasa. Then we shift into the paradigm of Karbanis. And then Yechoy Gili B'midbar means Karbanis, whichever I said that was. That's my own most good. So Moshe said to Hashem, I don't understand. I'm here to bring Das Hashem. That's the purpose of Yitzis Mitzrayim. Yitzis Mitzrayim is when Hashem reveals himself. Becomes known. How does he become known? Through doing Chesed Mishpat Tzedakah. Tzadik v'Toivlei. The good guys win, the bad guys lose. So I come to Parai and things get worse. Lama Hariyasa. So Hashem said to Moshe, that Ani Hashem to the Ovis was Lo Nodati. Shmi Hashem Lo Nodati. Means even though there was an offer of Ani Hashem, it didn't lead to Das. Because he said, Avram said B'ma'eda, and Yaakov said Lo Yadati. Which indicates that Das Hashem is not the only story. There's another story that's going to go parallel to Das Hashem, and that's the story that Hashem cannot be known. Hashem cannot be known means M'pei Ma Yesh Tzadik or Aloi. On the contrary, On the contrary, your question is Lama Hari Oisin Lama Zeh. Why did Paris say Lo Yadati? Because you, Moshe, are actually the one who's going to complete. You're not going to be the one who completes Das Hashem. On the one hand, you're coming to Bnei Yisrael with Das Hashem and Hashem. But on the other hand, you're going to bring to its completion what the Av is foreshadowed with Lo Yadati, with the rejection of Das Hashem. Okay, this will all be explained very soon. So hold on tight here. Let's explain how this works. Okay, let's explain now. Do we need to do a recap?
Yeah.
Recap. What?
What are we going to explain?
Yeah. What are we going to?
Exactly.
Okay. What are we going to explain exactly right now? Thank you. So right now, you know what? Whatever you got from the cheshbonis of the psukim over here is not so critical. We'll shift to a new thing right now. We're going to explain how is it that Ani Hashem, which is Das Hashem, and freedom go together, and then we'll get to the question of where the Torah fits into this trilogy. The question we started this year with, which is, what is our relationship with Hashem about? Is it about being free, or is it about having Das Hashem? And then, secondarily, where does the Torah fit into that? Okay. So now that we have a little bit of an understanding of what Das Hashem is, and we have a little bit of understanding of what the full offer of Ani Hashem is, to have complete familiarity with Hashem, I think it's very clear how that goes along with freedom. Because if you have Das Hashem, it means you know everything. You know everything. You know everything there is to know. That's a person who knows everything that can be knowable is the person who's truly free. Why? Because there's nothing that's external to him that forces him to act a certain way. If you understand everything, understand all the Maaseh Hashem, that means your mind is the mind of Hashem. Your mind is the mind of Hashem. Same way Hashem is free, you are free. Absolutely free. There's nothing that's outside of you that limits you, because everything is known to you.
No Yitzhar.
No Yitzhar. There's no Ra. Everything is incorporated in your Das, and you live in accordance with the totality, with everything, because you have Das of everything, because Das Hashem is Das of everything. And there's no Mitzarim, there's no boundaries, there's no pull. You're free. You're absolutely free. So the freedom from Mitzrayim, the literal freedom, it's freedom from bondage, is the core of the Torah, the core of the Ani Hashem. We'll get to the Torah in a minute. The core of the offer of Ani Hashem, which is really an offer for Das. No Hashem. No Hashem is to be free. There's nothing that limits you. So that's represented symbolically by being free from Mitzrayim. Also in a very deep way, someone who lives with this kind of freedom of having full knowledge is impossible to put into bondage. Cannot be enslaved. Cannot be subjugated, cannot be enslaved. Okay? A person who's infused with the freedom, such a free, noble soul, of having that the quality of freedom, because he's so there is nothing in reality that's menaged him, because he's koilel everything in his mind. Such a person, I submit, cannot be subjugated. So in a true way, you become a ben chayrim by having this das, and you also become a literal ben chayrim from someone who would put you in chains. In other words, the master who would put the person in chains and make him work, it's because that person lends himself to being subjugated, because most people are not ben chayrim anyways. What?
It's racist.
It's racist. You know who says this? Aristotle says this, and people say, "Oh, he's racist." Aristotle says, "Don't mention that are betivom slaves." But that's what it means. It doesn't have to be a race. It's betivom of their das. Lacking das is a slave mentality, and having das is a free mentality of freedom. And once a person lacks das on one level, any das, meaning not every fact is trivial, not every fact is important. Das Hashem is Das Hashem's kol everything. It means you get it. You get everything that's happening. Everything else is perusha. It doesn't mean you have to know every single thing that's happening in the world. You don't have to know how many planets there are, this and that. You know Chesed Mishpat. You get the rules. You get the core operating system of reality. So you're completely in tune with the whole of Mitzias. So you're a free and noble and perfect soul, and you don't let your psyche doesn't lend itself to subjugation. I put you in chains. It's not typhus. It's not minyan. In other words, the reason why a person subjugates you by Mitzias is because it capitalizes on the fact that you have a mindset of slavery, which we all do to some extent. We'll get to that soon. We all do. Yeah. Question?
Yeah, what's the Mitzias? How? Like if I'm born into a slave situation.
Yeah.
So how am I? And I find all the books, and I'm reading them.
Yeah, so eventually your
So
master's
how
going to
is
free you.
that?
Saying your master's going to free you. If you could adopt the mentality of freedom, I maintain.
He'll call and ask you to interpret his dreams for him.
What?
Said he'll ask you to interpret his
Yeah,
dreams.
yeah. He'll realize you're really on his team, and he'll figure out a way to exactly. He'll figure out a way to make you on his side. See, you're a master person, a master mentality. So that's the true promise of the Torah. It's not two different things that are happening. It's a very, very important question, by the way. I encourage you to think about this. I mean, this is what we're talking about but you have to realize how interesting this question is, and we don't think about it enough. It's why Yitzias Mitzrayim and the revelation of Hashem? Why does two things go together? Yitzias Mitzrayim is about freedom and bondage. And Hashem is about Hashem. What's happens? This is weird. It comes together. But Ani Hashem Yitzias is Hanuhach, because the one who has Das Hashem is fundamentally free, and the Torah is fundamentally about freedom. Judaism is fundamentally about freedom, and freedom that comes not stam freedom, true freedom, which comes from Das Hashem. Because if you have Das Hashem, there is nothing external to you.
How became an Eved doubt to do with first time you see Eved is the Cham.
Eved mentality, I guess.
It had to do with that.
Yeah, I have to think about that, but I would imagine so. So yeah, meaning if you focus on one aspect of reality as opposed to another, then you're inherently lending yourself to avdus. Because if you're selfish, if you focus on the guf, then you're automatically going to be opposed and find that which is lofty and spiritual to be in opposition to you. And maybe you're an eved kind of person. Actually, the person who's tuned into ruchnius, and ruchnius is kailon, is inherently has a mentality of freedom.
Yitzia didn't bring to das. Das brought to Yitzia. You're saying?
I think it goes together. There's opportune moments to adopt Das Hashem, and that itself will lead to the Yitzia. It's both. One started from heaven, one started from here. It goes both ways.
How come the Jews go to Mitzrayim also didn't know? So how come?
Oh,
how do we get up?
They went to Mitzrayim. Is that what you said?
No. How come? Like, why it's not fair? They don't know Hashem. The Mitzrayim and the Goyim don't know Hashem.
Right.
They also don't know. But when we don't know Hashem, we become slaves.
Take it up with that's your question. Because Avraham Avinu committed. Okay. The mice like this. True freedom is only vouched to those who have Das Hashem. Okay? Because that's total. You could carve out a sliver of reality, call it Mitzrayim, where the Das is Das of, Aton and whatever. Ra, right? The gods of Egypt. That means we have a certain kind of Das over here, and that's and any Das beyond this does not chal in this country. It's beyond the borders of this country. That's what it means that each country has its own sar, each himachim, so you could carve out that reality, but as soon as you come into contact with another civilization like the Jews, you're in big trouble. So who's the real free person in the story? Ultimately, the Jews are the real free men, because the Egyptians suffered by opposing the freedom of Israel.
How did the Yidden become a Chodim in the first place?
Because, what do you mean, what's the question? Because
They
Avraham Avinu lacked Das
started
Hashem. Because Avraham Avinu lacked Das Hashem. He said, B'ma'eda. B'ma'eda, so you don't take Ge'ez Arachma, because lacking Das means you're susceptible to be opposed, to be subjugated. Okay? Now, so what happens? So Moshe comes to them and says, Ani Hashem b'ga'alti ha'imach.
What's possible?
Which pasuk?
So my goal was in das.
Gola ami mibli das. Yeah? That's you mean?
Yeah.
So what does it say in Parshas Va'era? So Moshe Rabbeinu comes with a message of Ani Hashem of freedom, which is the same message. What it says over there is V'daber Moshe kino b'nei Yisrael v'lo yishamu el Moshe mikotze ruach me'aved kasha. Moshe comes with a message. The message is Ani Hashem and freedom. Lo yishamu el Moshe mikotze ruach me'aved kasha. Then listen. And this is a davar gadol ma'od ma'od. This lo yishamu el Moshe. Let me tell you a story that it says in Sefer Yechezkel. Everyone thinks lo yishamu el Moshe. Okay, Moshe offered them to be free, and they were able to be saved with it. Freedom. Too hard for them to be typhus. But it says in Yechezkel, Perek, a whole story. Here we have this vo'ivoda. Shmi Hashem lo nodati, vo'ivoda. V'esa yodi lahem lemer ani Hashem Elokeichem. This is Parshat Vayera. V'yoyim hu nasasi yodi lahem lo yitzia me'eretz Mitzrayim ela eretz asher tarti lahem zavas chol ha'udvash tzil chol ha'rotzes. Also clear in Parshat Vayera. Now we have a story. It doesn't appear in Parshat Vayera. V'omer aleim ish shikutze enav hashlichu u'v'gilulei Mitzrayim al titama'u ani Hashem Elokeichem. Throw away your avodah zarah. V'yamruvi v'le'ovu l'shmoy elai ish shikutze neim lo yaslichu v'gilulei Mitzrayim lo yazavu. I was going to destroy them. But the Maisa, because of my shame, once I said my shame and I was annoyed at my shame, so it would be a chil Hashem. So maybe I brought him out of Mitzrayim. Where does it say this whole story? That Hashem said, throw you over desire, and they rejected it. It says in these psukim, Ani Hashem, we read the Torah, we think the exciting part is, and they couldn't hear that they could be free. No, they couldn't hear Ani Hashem. Hashem means serve me, don't serve Avodah Zarah. L'Shem Moshe means Vayamu, and they didn't throw it away. But there's a whole kunz over here. That once it's Ani Hashem, so Hashem's name is associated with us, Mil is Chel Hashem, so we're safe. We found the way out. Okay? But the original plan, again, let's figure what that means. The original paragraph, the original plan is Ani Hashem and everything that entails.
So it's interesting that Cheskel saying Vayvad Alahem, even though in the Torah there is no babe.
There is and isn't. No, so here's there is and isn't, because right, very good. But also it says Shmi Hashem Lo Noidati, which implies Mashenki now, maybe yeah. Right. See, that's the thing. The Sukkim are doing sort of contradictory things. Because on the one hand I'm saying Shmi Hashem Lo Noidati, that means you should know that the Ovis didn't have das, so you're also not going to have das. That's one level of meaning. That's what I was saying before. That Moshe said, Lama Hari Isa, and the answer was, what does it mean, Lama Hari Isa? Why did Parish say, Lo Yadati Hashem? I thought it was supposed to be Das Hashem. The answer was yes and no. It's used sometimes about Das Hashem, but you should know that the Ovis, who are the ones who started everything, also dealt with lack of Das Hashem. Because he said, Lama Eda, Lo Yadati. So that's one level of meaning, but at the simple level of meaning of the pasuk is Shmi Hashem Lo Noidati Lahem, and now it's time to have das. I think those were both there. The Maisa, in a very important way, and this is why you can't understand anything, and we'll get to this. You cannot understand mamish anything about the whole Torah unless you realize there's two fundamentally contradictory things going on in the whole Torah Kula, which are these two things, and they're both here in the very same sukkim are saying, I think both. Shmi Hashem Lo Noidati Lahem, and now it's time to have das. That's Pashim Shabbat, but I'm saying there's also Shmi Hashem Lo Yadati, I Hashem said Ani Hashem Ta'af Min Yaakov. Torah says, yeah, but they said Lo Yadati B'Ma'id, and that's also Lo Yadati Lahem. And it's telling Moshe, don't be surprised if your message of freedom is going to have built in within it a rejection of that. And Taka, Moshe Rabbeinu went and said Ani Hashem, V'lo Yishama Moshe, Nachamo, V'lo Moshe, we're going to the Kasha. What? Avol the offer of Ani Hashem itself is also something.
Say what's going on. Closely had that problem the offer.
Right, we did have the problem.
Right. We did it once it didn't accept it.
So why is the Vilti Hachel only start with the message?
Yet.
Right. I mean, the fact is they had the guarantee that there will be happen to the Ummah as well. I mean, in other words, the Vilti Hachel of Yechezkel, why? It's also because Chos Abs, saying it's only because of Avram set that emotion. Everything that happened in Esau. What? Mm-hmm. Right? It's because of Ani Hashem. Okay, I hear. Good. Very good. Okay, so let's understand. Now we're getting to very deep waters. Let me explain what's going on here. What is this? Here's the point. Here we're talking so far about Ani Hashem, Das Hashem, and freedom. That's associated with Ani Hashem. But Lamaisa, it's impossible to be free. In other words, the offer to be completely free was rejected by Bnei Yisrael. I want to talk about what that means, why it's impossible to be free, and then, if we have time, we'll get back to tie it together with Moshe. We have to get back to that a little bit. But let me talk about this L'Shamol Moshe. The Torah's offer, so far we spoke about 2 out of 3 of the elements that we started this year with. The 3 elements were Ani Hashem, which is Das Hashem, freedom from bondage, and the 3rd element is Torah. So far we showed that the first 2 are identical. Because having Das Hashem is having nothing it's supposed to. Now let's talk about L'Shamol Moshe. L'Shamol Moshe means the people rejected freedom. And, like all Pesukim in the Torah, it would be a grave error to read this as some contingent historical event. Once upon a time, if only it would have listened to Moshe, everything would have been different. Yes, that's true. The Torah is telling us something that's fundamental. The Shema Moshe is something fundamental about humanity. And that fundamental fact about humanity is human beings cannot be completely free. I'll explain to you what that means. If you let yourself truly think freely, without any gedarim, without any laws, without anything that you accept as being absolute, I maintain that you won't let yourself think freely. Let's take Lo Sirtzach, for example. If you wouldn't say, okay, I'm going to think as freely as I want, as I will, as I may, but I'm refused to touch certain things are sacrosanct. Like I will not contemplate the possibility that it's okay to kill. So then you're going to think well, because you're carving a certain gather. But if you don't have certain guardrails, certain things that are absolute, then you will never allow yourself to think freely, because out of fear that it will take you. Maybe it will take you to death, which means maybe you'll get to the point where nothing has any meaning, and so lack of meaning that your brain will stop giving you messages for your heart to beat or to breathe. So, and this is something you have to think about. But it's pashut. You should go try it. Go try it, or at least imagine it. Imagine what would it be like to truly think freely and to let yourself go wherever it takes you without any prior commitments. And this is something that people are not capable of.
First one, let himself do it.
Correct.
Let's say once someone does it for a moment, continue that.
Okay, I'm maintaining that they won't do it. I'm maintaining that no one has ever done it.
Because no one's born like that.
Everyone needs guardrails in order to begin thinking freely. Paradoxically, which means in order to begin thinking freely, you need to have certain things that are limits.
Why is this pashut? Is everybody saying why?
So I said you have to go imagine it. Go imagine what would it look like if you truly rethought everything. And I think you'll immediately be concerned by, wait a second, what if that leads me I don't know where? And I know you think that you'll be okay with that, but I think you won't be okay with that. No, in other words, I think you'll be like, oh, that's scary. Because what if it leads me somewhere? If it leads me there, I'm okay. But you sort of don't really know that, because maybe you're going to think wrong.
It's too scary.
It's too scary. It's too scary. Okay, this is what I'm timing. You have to think about this, whether it's true or not.
And what about like Avram?
Oh, it's a good question. How does it start? Where does anything get started from, right? Good. Avram you said, I don't want it. He said, I don't want it. I want Hashem to tell me something. I don't want das. That's what he said. You cannot have full das.
Full das.
We're saying this is what das means.
Yeah, I'm saying like this. Let's put it this way. Even the Nevi'im who have das Hashem owe great debt to the Torah. Why? Because the Torah asserts certain things, like Lesitza, Lesinav, and said, okay, let's establish the rules of thinking that the Nevi'im were then able to engage in thought to reach das Hashem. So that's why I'm saying there's a certain paradoxically,
is reached by this type of.
Anyone who doesn't have those guardrails will not engage in das, like Moshe, like Avram and Moshe, Avram and Yaakov said. Can't. I need to know first that I'm not going to reach some conclusions that are absurd. What conclusions would be reached? We don't even know. We don't know. I have to think. That's like this is really beyond that page.
That's showing thinking freely.
Yeah, knowing everything. What do you mean? How else do you know?
That's how it's reached.
No, remember we said freedom. It's both. I mean, both. How do you attain Das Hashem? We could talk about various exercises that you attain it. But Das Hashem means full engagement with thought, with reality. And Mameli you're free. Mameli you're free. And you also have to both. You sing both. Both you have to think freely. Am I mixing things up over here?
Like thinking freely could mean not being held down by certain things.
Yeah.
And freedom also means in line with reality.
Yeah. Both.
Aren't you
Both.
blending both of them?
No. I'm not blending both. I'm saying that you won't think free. In order to reach das, you need to be able to think freely. Or how else can you reach das? I'm saying das means to
as a way to get there.
The same way, I mean, about any matter. Someone has
Yeah, but
portrayal on something.
right, but but only think about the
Supposed to
totality.
do that.
No, right. If you mitzvah to himself to certain things, that a person is willing to do. If the guy says, "I'll think about one prat," so he knows what's at stake. But if you think about everything, which is Das Hashem, then you're putting everything at stake. That's what I'm saying. There's only a risk when you're thinking about everything. Because you want to get to freedom. I'm saying because you want to get to freedom, which is knowing everything, that requires a complete freedom of thought. Mashenkin, if I'm only thinking about a specific problem. No, if I'm thinking about a specific, I don't think so. If I'm thinking about a specific problem, then I only have to be free to think about that, while I could accept the limitations of everything else. But if I'm thinking about the totality of being, which is Das Hashem, I can't be constrained. And it's very scary to not be constrained. No one's able to not be constrained.
There are
What is
many
it
people-
besides from Moshe? What is that?
Yeah, let's leave that. What's the question?
I don't know if it's relevant.
No,
yeah. There seems like there are people that have in the past said like, philosophers, I'm going to try to do freely with nothing. Start
Right.
from
So
scratch.
exactly. So I
And
maintain
they
that
weren't
either
scared.
no. So I say this: either they didn't ultimately do it, or
Consciously they're scared.
so yeah, exactly what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Or they
subconsciously scared.
stopped at a
Or
point.
they stopped at a point. In other words, they knew that no one's going to take them up on their. They also knew that no one's going to take them up on their conclusions. So it's very easy to be a philosopher when no one cares. Right? They weren't kings. They weren't philosophers. We're talking about someone who's going to be a philosopher king. Is that possible? In other words, he's going to put his philosophy into practice and across the board, across the whole reality. Is that possible? Let's say one person exists. Make it simple. One person exists. Will he be free to philosophize? That's what I'm saying won't be. The philosophizer is able to trust that don't worry about it. If he goes too crazy, the law is going to constrain him. Even if he himself is willing to carve out freedom within his study, it's very easy. It might be easier to do that because you always have the law to stop him in case things go crazy, right? It's very easy for philosophers to come at the conclusion everyone should kill each other. Okay, like I said before, it's not serious in real life. No, it's not a big deal. What?
Some
We're going back to the shade in the room? Right? Say that? Okay. Good. So this is where the Torah comes in. Tikkun says, maybe it's a Zohar, it's a Chodesh, that they made Bnei Yisrael work with Chomer over Levanim. Chomer is Kal Chomer, and Levanim is Binyanav. Levanim is Binyanav. So the Shibur of Mitzrayim is the Midrash Atayna. What's going on over here? People read it like an antinomian. Antinomian means against the law, which obviously it is, but it's not against the law. It's recognizing that the law, Dainu, Kavachomer, Benyanav, Midrash Atayna, is a function of Shibur Mitzrayim. And this is the blurring that's happening in the Shmois and era is mamish this shmuz. That Moshe thought, okay, it's going to be a sharp end to Shibud, an end to Tzadik V'Ra'alai. The Tkufa of Nevuah starts with Yitzias Mitzrayim. Hazlocha Milchi Gashni B'Midbar. Yitzias Mitzrayim is associated with anti-Karbonis. And the Shibud is going to come to an end. A sharp, quick end. Loma Hariyos Lama Zeh. Oh, so 1 second. The answer is Hashem's telling you there's some bleeding over. Yes, it's all about Cherus. Yes, it's all about Ani Hashem. But Shibud Mitzrayim is a contributing factor to the Hasaga of Ani Hashem, and therefore, because Lashama Moshe V'Katzim Avadikasha, which is a feature of a human being, Lashama Moshe V'Katzim Avadikasha, there's a need always for Chomer and Levanim and Avadikasha, and that need is achieved through the Avdus Hashem. Well, Avdus of Hashem is Chomer Levanim Kaval Chomer B'Nina. So it's law, not do what you think is right. Do what the pasuk says and be derish it. It's following the law, like avodim, avdei Hashem. Avdei Hashem is a hemshech of avdei parah. But the real ideal, hypothetically, the real ideal is a das that can be absolutely free. It's only hypothetical because l'shama Moshe V'Katzim Avadikasha. So in order to have freedom, because what guarantees freedom, what guarantees the whole promise of Das Hashem, is having guardrails that allow people to think freely. And without those things that you're outsourcing to Hashem, so to speak, saying, okay, Hashem already established, with the Midrash and everything, and so on and so forth, that's already off limits. putting that off limits from thought is what gives you, that's the boundary within which Ani Hashem could reach its fullest realization.
So Shaykhis to Hashem is not through the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs are just
Oh,
to
okay,
make sure
good.
we don't.
Good. So let me tell you the maskana over here, and I hope we can address that a little bit. The maskana is like this. The maskana is that we, like, what's our machivasa be'lamai, according to this whole shmooze, is to focus on das Hashem. Leave mitzvahs out for a minute. We'll figure out mitzvahs soon. Just broadly speaking, what are we supposed to
Did you
do?
ever discuss an answer what the Nevi'im was saying?
What's the problem? What's the question?
The Nevi'im also need karbanas.
Yeah.
They need karbanas to know Hashem. So why they're saying don't forget the karbanas to know Hashem?
Right. No. But they need things that are not. They need to have a certain kind of framework within which they can have das Hashem.
Yeah, so I'm saying, so how can they tell the people?
Saying why don't they?
Don't do these bonding. Things and know Hashem. But how do I know Hashem?
Okay, that's an interesting question. In other words, why can't the Nevi'im know that it's important to not know? Okay, I have to think about that. I'm not sure you could actually do both at the same time. And I think it's very important that these two things don't talk to each other. If you know that you don't know certain things, you don't have to ask Hashem. The Nevi'im can't know that. Yeah? See, this is what the Torah is trying to do over here. We have to figure out a way to simultaneously create this illusion of freedom, this kasvurim liris. It has to be a convincing illusion. If it's not a convincing illusion, then you don't have das Hashem. So I think that
This is what Torah serves as Hashem.
yeah, Torah serves das Hashem.
So why is Torah answer das Hashem? Why?
No, because the only way you could serve das Hashem is creating.
Is that probably in Torah's mission also? There's a kind of the Nevi'im going on too. There should be there, right?
Why? What do you mean by that? I mean Torah's mission.
In the Torah,
Yeah.
the Torah's after you have Torah, so then you have Nevi'im. Like
Right.
That's Hashem.
Right.
So why doesn't the Torah support Das Hashem?
It's not a Torah. It's not what the Torah is doing. The Torah is creating the
It's
conditions
not
for das
Torah.
Hashem.
Why
The Torah is creating. Moshe's job is to create the conditions for das Hashem by giving a definition to loyadat. In other words, prior to Moshe, the loyadati was undefined. It was Shibud Mitzrayim. We couldn't make anything out of it. Moshe Rabbeinu took Shibud Mitzrayim and he put Shibud Mitzrayim in the service of das Hashem by turning Chomer Levanim into Kavah Chomer B'Dinav. That was the key. That was the magic trick.
They had to come chronologically.
Not
They had to come first.
We have to think about it. We have to think about all these. It opens up a lot of questions, which I think are very interesting questions. And I think that's a mile. The fact that they're interesting questions, we can't explore them all right now. But I'm saying, what do we have to do? And this is a very important idea. We have to focus on das, but this is a very important thing. Because ultimately, Torah is about das. The more das you have, the more the Torah has to be strengthened as Torah, which is to say, as chayk. And people make two mistakes, and this relates to your question. There's two mistakes that people make. One mistake is to make the Torah reasonable. They want the Torah to be das. They want the Torah to be talk to das. They want the sirtzach to be chesed mishpat stuff. By the way, you know who liked this very much? Yisro. Yisro came to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says, "Lo matu yeshu levadecha." You're the only one that can pass on shaylos. We need to have a way that the Torah is something that even the non-Moshes could relate to. And Yisro said, "Atu yadati ki god Hashem." Yisro says, "Very nice, Moshe. You have your mahalach over here, but it's levad, and we need to have some bridge between you and everyone else." And that's the beginning of Sefer Devarim. Sefer Devarim also starts off with the Mina Shoftim, which is the bridge between Moshe and everyone else. So Yisro basically made everything very confusing, because really the Torah in its purity is supposed to be chukim, and only Moshe can tell you the halacha, because no one else understands it. It doesn't mean anything to anyone else. But Yisro came and said, let's make it relatable. Let's make it relatable. And from then things get complicated. In other words, from then you could say there are things in the Torah that make sense. And maybe it's a good thing that they make sense. But I want to sketch it out in its purest form. The essence of the Torah is those things that are chukim, that are laws. The reason why Kabbanis is taken as the spitz of the Torah, and the reason why Torah is chukim, is laws. And the fact that the Torah is also moral is l'maisa. From my perspective, I think it's more of a red herring. It's more of a distraction. It makes us misunderstand the Torah. And this is the key thing I wanted you to take away, that das, which is morality, values, has to operate in parallel and in tandem with the Torah. says the more you have Das Hashem, and you have to work on Das Hashem, the more the Torah has to be strong, because it's the strength of the Torah by you, the fact that you're committed to the Torah as law, which allows you to engage freely in the pursuit of Das. So if you're going to make the Torah reasonable, you lost everything. You lost the Torah, you lost Das, because truth is Torah is not reasonable, and the truth is, so you don't have Das, you don't have Torah. You have to have these two things. On the other hand, people have Das, and they have Das Hashem, and they say, okay, so what do I have the Torah for? I'm a good guy. But the emes is that it's the Torah that creates those conditions that you can be a good person, Das-wise. And I'm also maintaining, I think this is true, that the more you misamik in Das, the more you have clarity in Das Hashem, the more that the more you have to give strength and misamik in the Torah being Torah, which is Taka stands in antithesis to Das. So your question, where mitzvahs come in, there is a bit of a blur. The blur you see in Chazal. I mean, you see this in Chazal. There's one thing called Sisi Yashavat Toiv, would be a good person. Very nice. And then there's another thing called all the pratim of Hashem Zaveda and other mitzvahs. Which one is it? There's a certain tension. I mean, I think Mustam would say familiar to everyone. There's a certain tension, which I hope this year is better coming to solve. That tension between basically what does Hashem want from you? He wants you to be a good person, like Taka says, and the Torah also says it sometimes. And people know how to be a good person, and then they should become a good person. So what do you need the Torah for? And then there's the pratim of Allah. So again, one move is to say, oh, those pratim are what it means to be a good person. I think that's true. I think that ends up doing disjustice to goodness, being a good person, and it does disjustice, injustice to the pratim of Allah, which are dear to not to be about us. The Dafka not.
You know, Shainim come and say reasonings for the mitzvahs.
Yeah, comes from Yisrael. I told you Yisrael said we don't need reasons. Give them reasons.
So this is all before Yisrael, but after Yisrael it's different.
Say that. That's the next expiration. No, what I mean to say is there's a billboard, there's a tishtish. We know there's a tishtish for thousands of years till this year came along. You didn't have this clarity.
I think, but is this a conclusion or is Yisrael a conclusion?
Nothing's a conclusion, because the conclusion is when somehow when the darkness gets removed, then somehow Moshe Rabbeinu's request for Das gets resolved, and then we're going to bring Kabbanis from Das. That's a whole different. That'll be Mr. Shem. Next week, if Trump goes ahead and he does what he has to do, then Mitzvah will be here a little longer, and maybe that'll be next year.
This could be the Kavanah.
One second, before I push, is there anything that has to be brought together that needs clarity? I mean, there's a lot of things. But anything that's specific that like Philip was lacking? Going back to Moshe and the Nevi'im and where they fit into this last thing is important.
Being left in a bilbul is itself a lack.
Who's Mavulbul? No, it's not a bilbul. There's Tzvei Dinah.
What's a bilbul? Who's a bilbul? What's
not a bilbul. There's two.
What's bilbul?
No, but we're saying that Yisrael, Maisa said that we do that.
Yisrael
was wrong.
No.
And all the Rishonim are going to Yisrael. And all the Yisrael.
Of course you should go to Yisrael.
That's
You also know.
Yisrael didn't have such.
So what are we doing?
We're learning Torah. We know everything. Why do we come here? Why do we come here tonight?
No, so I'm doing Yisrael. That means that we basically not doing
right.
Not
we're learning Turkish Seder. We're learning Shmos Ve'er, Boy V'Shal Yisrael. Then we'll get to Yisrael. So you have to understand this, and then you can see what Yisrael's move is. Where you can see.
Rabbi, this is a good example of this. It's like the Bali Machshava. They say sometimes they'll say, the Psak. They won't think about halacha at all. They'll just say, I have my place. They'll tell me, I'm gonna go learn what a Shem. I'm gonna learn this. So they have no reason. They don't know the cheshbon. They don't know.
Right. That's what I think.
Just take it as text. Give me the text what to do, so I can go think about what I want.
How wrong is the other way? Someone says, I'm kind of Torah. That's right.
Yeah. So good for him. He's a Moshe person. Good for him.
He
doesn't have Das Hashem.
He's not really a Moshe person. Moshe's goal, I think we're asserting, was just to put in place a system which
allows for Das. Yeah. No, but he's supporting the system. He's supporting the system of Moshe. That's the nature of law. The nature of law is this is what it means to break the law. Break the law means to break the law. You made it ice law. A law is a law because people don't break it. If you break it, you're doing it a disservice. You know why it's such a big deal? Someone's over Allah. It's a big deal to the other guy, to everyone else. Who cares about it?
I'm saying, what are you supposed to be doing all day? From morning to night, what are we supposed to be doing?
I told you.
Learning
Yeah.
Torah isn't.
Let's do two different things.
Mitzvahs or that's Hashem?
You have to do two different things. The takeaway is you have to do two different things, and it's very important to keep them separate. That's the takeaway. That don't try to be
No,
do das Hashem, be Yosef das Hashem, and be Yosef. And the more Yosef das Hashem, the more you have to be
This is
as
what-
Torah.
This is
If
why
you
you're
learn
supposed
Allah as
to
Allah,
listen. This is why you're supposed to tell this
Yeah,
way. This is still passes easier.
there's one certain